In 2026, more and more Americans are realizing something unsettling. It's not that they failed. It's not that they didn't try hard enough. It's that even after doing everything right, they still feel exhausted. They work consistently, pay their bills on time, and try to live responsibly. The stress never really fades. The cost of living has become unpredictable. Rent, insurance, groceries, everything keeps shifting, making it impossible to feel secure about tomorrow. Healthcare, something that should bring peace of mind, has turned into a financial risk. One emergency, one unexpected visit can create fear that lingers for years, and safety is no longer a feeling, it's a reflex. You're constantly aware, constantly calculating, constantly on guard, even in places that once felt normal. Then, a quiet but honest question appears. If I've done everything right, and I still feel this worn down, is the problem really me? This video isn't about saying America is bad. It's about exploring a different comparison about countries where systems are built to be gentler on ordinary people, where life isn't a constant test of endurance. If you're considering living or retiring abroad, watch this video to the end, because maybe what you need isn't to push harder, but a system that hurts you less every single day. Country 5. Portugal. The easiest Europe for Americans to breathe. Portugal rarely shows up in loud conversations about reinventing your life. It doesn't promise explosive success. It doesn't sell the fantasy of getting rich fast. And that's exactly why so many Americans, after spending time here, realize something quietly powerful: they can finally breathe. In the United States, healthcare is a calculation. When you feel unwell, the question isn't just, "What will the doctor say?" It's, "How much will this cost me?" Time off. Something meant for recovery often feels like a privilege. You ask for it. You feel guilty. You take too much. You worry how it looks. Life runs as if you must constantly prove you've earned the right to slow down. Portugal works differently. Not perfectly, but differently. Here, public and private healthcare exist side by side. A single emergency isn't likely to destroy your finances. You can use the public system with controlled costs, or choose private clinics that are still affordable for middle-income residents. More important than the price is the feeling. When you enter the system, fear isn't the default. Labor laws in Portugal reflect a different philosophy as well. Rest isn't treated as laziness. Personal time isn't something you have to beg for. Life isn't designed to push you faster every year. It's designed so you don't burn out along the way. You feel this immediately in everyday life. Lunch isn't something you inhale at your desk. People sit down. They eat slowly. They talk. Cities are built for walking, for short distances, for pausing without guilt. No one rushes you to move faster. No one asks what's next, how much you make, or why you haven't advanced yet. Living in Portugal isn't about having more. It's about having enough. Enough peace to sleep well. Enough stability to plan ahead. Enough mental space that you're not constantly bracing for impact. For many Americans, this is the first time they realize they're not being pushed by the system every single day. Of course, Portugal isn't a paradise. Salaries are lower. If you're used to American income levels, expectations need adjustment. Bureaucracy can be slow and occasionally frustrating, and patience becomes a skill you'll have to relearn. But in exchange, you gain something rare, a life that doesn't grind you down piece by piece. Portugal won't make you rich quickly. It won't turn you into a social media version of success, but it gives you the chance to live without being worn away. And for many people, especially those entering the second half of life, that's worth more than any number on a paycheck. Country. Japan. Discipline, replacing chaos. Japan isn't a place that tries to impress you with spectacle. It doesn't seek attention. But from the very first days, you begin to notice something profoundly different from life in the United States. Things work the way they're supposed to. And for people exhausted by years of uncertainty, that alone creates a rare sense of relief. In America, chaos isn't always loud, but it's everywhere. You're never fully sure public services will work when you need them. You're not confident the system will be on your side when something goes wrong. You live with backup plans for your backup plans because trust in institutions has slowly eroded. Life becomes a constant reaction to risk instead of a stable flow you can rely on. Japan moves in the opposite direction. Here, social safety isn't a slogan, it's a daily experience. Public services operate with such consistency that doubt almost disappears. Trains arrive on time, procedures are clear, rules are applied evenly. You don't wake up wondering whether the system will function today because the default assumption is that it will. This shows most clearly in everyday life. You can ride a train late at night without carrying a constant sense of fear. You don't scan your surroundings or rehearse exit strategies. Safety in Japan doesn't come from force. It comes from order and shared responsibility. And that creates a very different mental state than the heightened vigilance many Americans have learned to live with. Healthcare reinforces that feeling. In Japan, going to the hospital doesn't carry the threat of financial ruin. Universal health insurance keeps costs predictable and transparent. When you're sick, your focus stays on recovery, not on whether the bill will follow you for years. It builds a quiet foundation of security. You won't be abandoned when you need care. Living in Japan creates a rare sensation, the feeling that the future is predictable. Not because life is easy, but because the rules are clear and the system behaves consistently. For many Americans, this is the first time they realize how exhausting it has been to always prepare for the worst. Of course, Japan is not easy. Integration takes effort. The language barrier is real. Cultural expectations are strict, and daily life requires observation, adaptation, and respect for shared norms. You can't simply drift through the system. In Japan, you adapt to it, it doesn't bend around you. But that is also the point. Japan doesn't promise comfort. It promises stability. It doesn't make you feel special, but it also doesn't wear you down with constant uncertainty, disorder, and stress. And for people who have spent years living in survival mode, that kind of steadiness can feel like a quiet form of luxury. Japan isn't easy, but it doesn't exhaust you every single day. Country 3. Slovenia. The quiet Europe most Americans don't know. Slovenia is rarely part of big conversations. It doesn't chase attention, spark controversy, or sell itself as a quick fix for life. And yet, that's exactly why many Americans, after spending time here, realize something unexpected: they've been living in tension for far too long. In the United States, stress isn't just about work or money. It's the constant pull into conflict, political, social, cultural. Everything feels polarized. Even when you just want to live quietly, the environment pushes you to take sides, to react, to stay guarded. Daily life becomes a series of small defenses. Slovenia moves at a different rhythm. Life here is slower, smaller, and quieter. Not because people are disengaged, but because society isn't built on constant confrontation. You're not dragged into invisible battles every day. Life allows you to exist without always reacting. That calm is supported by the system itself. Slovenia is among the safest countries in Europe, with low crime and a genuine sense of security in everyday life. Universal healthcare means access to care doesn't come with fear or financial dread. When you need help, the system shows up imperfect, yes, but reliable enough that you don't live in constant anxiety. Daily life centers around small cities and tightly knit communities. Ljubljana. The capital feels more like a large town than a pressured metropolis. People recognize one another. Cafes are places to linger, not rush through. Conversations happen naturally without competition or urgency. Most of all, there's the feeling of living here. You're not constantly on guard. You don't step outside bracing for the next problem. You don't spend mental energy assessing risk in every ordinary moment. Your mind finally has room to rest, and for many Americans, that space has been missing for years. Of course, Slovenia isn't for everyone. The job market is small, and opportunities, especially in specialized fields, are limited compared to the US. If you're in a phase of aggressive career growth, Slovenia may feel restrictive. This is a place for stability, not acceleration. But that modesty is precisely its strength. Slovenia doesn't try to be the center of the world. It doesn't force you to keep up with anyone else's pace. Slovenia isn't loud, and that's exactly what makes it livable. Country: Uruguay. A rare pocket of stability in South America. Uruguay isn't a place that makes you say, wow, at first glance. It's quiet, unflashy. It doesn't try to impress. But that calm is exactly why many Americans, after living here for a while, realize something deeply relieving: they're no longer exhausted by politics. In the United States, politics seeps into everything. News cycles, social media, family dinners, workplaces. There's always an undercurrent of tension, a sense that you're expected to take sides, react, defend your position. Even if you want no part of it, the noise follows you everywhere like a background hum that never switches off. Uruguay feels different. It is one of the most stable democracies in South America, with relatively low polarization, and a political system that has remained consistent for decades. Governments change, but the foundations hold. Laws are clear. Institutions function. You don't wake up every morning wondering which direction the country will suddenly swing. That stability shows clearly in healthcare and the legal system. Uruguay offers universal healthcare where access doesn't come with panic or financial fear. Legal frameworks are transparent, allowing you to understand your rights, your obligations, and where you stand. Life stops feeling like a guessing game. Daily life in Uruguay moves at a deliberately slower pace. People aren't racing. They're not competing for status. Afternoons stretch out over coffee walks along the coast, and moments quiet enough for you to hear your own thoughts again. The cost of living is also more predictable, not necessarily cheap, but stable, making long-term planning possible without constant anxiety. The strongest feeling Uruguay offers is long-term peace of mind. Not short bursts of excitement, but the sense that this life is sustainable. You're not constantly bracing for sudden shocks. You can think about the future without immediately asking, what if everything falls apart? Of course, Uruguay isn't for everyone. It's small, calm, not particularly lively. Entertainment options are limited, and opportunities don't come fast or loud. If you crave constant stimulation, Uruguay may feel almost too quiet. But that quiet is precisely its strength. Uruguay doesn't try to thrill you. It doesn't chase excitement. What it offers instead is sustainability, a stable, predictable life calm enough to stay in for the long run. And for many people, worn down by years of volatility and noise that is far more valuable than excitement. Country: Finland. A society designed for humans. Finland isn't a place that overwhelms you at first glance. It isn't loud. It doesn't show off. It doesn't try to convince you that it's better. But if there's one country where Americans, after living there for a while, begin to wonder, why can't life always be this simple? That country is Finland. In the United States, burnout is often celebrated. Overwork is seen as dedication. Exhaustion gets framed as success. Rest needs justification. And if you slow down, society is quick to remind you that you're falling behind. Life becomes a long race, where fatigue isn't a warning sign, it's the standard. Finland is built on a completely different philosophy. Here, healthcare, education, and social welfare aren't privileges for the few. They're the foundation of the entire society. You don't fear getting sick. You don't live with the anxiety of being abandoned when things go wrong. The system exists to reduce pressure on people, not push them to the breaking point. You feel this immediately in daily life. Finland is one of the safest countries in the world. You can walk at night without being on guard. Children move freely. Adults don't live in a constant state of vigilance. Personal space is deeply respected. No intrusion, no pressure, no demand that you perform or present yourself in a certain way. The feeling of living in Finland is hard to describe with flashy words. It isn't explosive happiness. It's peace without performance. A quiet morning, a workday that ends on time, an evening that doesn't drain you. Life doesn't need to feel extraordinary to feel good. Of course, Finland has its downsides. Winters are long and dark, testing your mental resilience. The cost of living is high, especially in larger cities. This isn't a place for maximum savings or flashy lifestyles. Finland asks you to accept simplicity, both materially and emotionally. But that simplicity is the point. Finland doesn't try to make you happy through pressure achievement or comparison. It doesn't demand more, faster, harder. What it does instead is remove the things that quietly make people suffer every day: constant insecurity, fear, and the sense that the system is working against you. And when those things disappear, you begin to realize something profound. Happiness doesn't always need to be chased. Sometimes it simply emerges when a society is designed correctly for humans, not for burnout. Many Americans don't need to be richer. They don't need a dramatic upgrade or a flashier life on social media. What they truly need is a place that hurts them less every day. A system that doesn't grind them down with constant stress, insecurity, and the feeling of always being on guard. Sometimes living better isn't about having more. It's about having less taken from you, less fear, less pressure, less of the sense that life itself is something you have to fight. If you could choose one place to live differently for the next 5 years, not to escape, but to breathe easier and build something more sustainable, which country would you choose? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want to continue exploring journeys that are honest, grounded, and free from hype, don't forget to subscribe to discover Globe Places Top 10 so we can keep walking this path together.